Well, good morning. Happy New Year. How are you? Feeling good? It's good to see you guys, whether you are first-time guests joining us here on campus or online from somewhere else. Welcome. It's great to spend part of the day with you. I'm glad to be back. Missed you guys last Sunday. We take the Sunday after Christmas off every year just to give our volunteers and our staff a chance to travel, be with family, rest a little bit, do what they need to do. So it's a good break, but I'm always ready to get back and kick off a new year. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm excited for what we're going to get into this morning. Just one thing I want to mention before we get going, and that is January 25th. I'd love for you to circle that date on your calendars, okay? That night, here at First Christian, in this room, we're going to have a vision night. We're going to talk about everything that God has put in front of us, we believe, for this year and for the few years that are ahead of us. And it's going to be a really, really big, really exciting, fun, but also very important night in the life of our church. So I would love for you to be here. This is your invitation. Everybody's welcome. We're going to have some worship that night. I'm going to share a lot about the plans that are ahead of us. So if you're curious, if you're excited, if you want to know more, we'd love for you to join us that night just to kind of lay it all out on the table, and we'll pray about it, and then we're off and running. So January 25th, 6:30 p.m. right here in this room. Circle your calendar and make sure you're here for that, all right? Hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you had a great New Year. Just curious, anybody do New Year's resolution this year? Anybody? Does anybody do those anymore? I see a few hands. Most of us quit doing this. I set goals. I don't do resolutions. I saw some stats a few years ago that by the end of the first week of January, 23% of New Year's resolutions have failed. By the end of the month, it's like 40-some percent, and only 10% make it all year. But I know those of you who raised your hands, you're going to be different, right? You're the exceptions. Yeah. Now, I set goals. See, what I found is I come into a new year with the best of intentions. I'm all about new things, new routines, getting out of old routines and rhythms and some things, and maybe you are too. And what a lot of us find is you come into a new year with the best of intentions, but then we all hit these days or weeks or months sometimes where we just lose momentum. It's like we hit a wall. And what we would say is not maybe like we feel like we're failing. It's not that we feel like we've, necessarily messed something up. We're stuck. It's not that we're moving backward, we're just not moving forward. And so what we're going to start today is a 4-week series called Living an Unstuck Life. All through the month of January, we're going to talk about 4 critical areas of life and what to do when you feel like you're just not moving forward. Maybe what you've done before isn't working anymore. And so because it's not working, you're not making progress like you used to. Maybe something used to click and it's just not clicking. Or maybe it's like I'm doing the same things that I used to do that worked and now it's not working. Whatever the case is, if you feel like you're stuck in your life in some area, then this series is for you. And we're going to start this morning by talking about what it means to be stuck in our faith. We're just going to set the table for a good year by talking about how to get unstuck in this area of our lives. So let me pray, and we're going to get going, okay? Let's pray. God, this morning, just communicate to us through your word how to be in sync with you so that you can lead us forward. I pray for anybody who's maybe trying to do this on their own strength or their own willpower today that you'd help them to see that just doesn't work. So help us lean into you, help us hear from you. We know you want the best for us, and so we love you, and we pray this in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen, amen. Well, if you've ever felt like you've been stuck in your faith in some way in your life, not confused about belief. It's not like you'd say, I don't believe in God anymore. You're not throwing in the towel. You're not ready to give up, but you just feel like you're stuck a little bit. You're still showing up. You're still trying. You still believe, but something's just not clicking. Kind of what I was saying a minute ago. It's just like, it's just not clicking like it used to. And you can't point to what's wrong. You can't really put your finger on it. You've tried, but you just can't quite figure it out because nothing blew up, nothing fell apart. You just kind of hit a wall. If you've ever found yourself in that place, then the hardest part is, for those of us who've been doing this for a minute, and if you're brand new to faith, if you're brand new to church, if you're brand new to the idea of following Jesus, then man, I'm so glad that you're here. This will serve you well in the future. If you've been doing this, if you've been following Jesus for a little while, then you already know this is true. The hardest part is, you know what you're supposed to do, you know what you're supposed to say, you know the boxes you're supposed to check, you know all the right things to do. What do you do when it just doesn't work anymore? What do you do when you feel stuck like that? Deep down, you find yourself wondering things like, why is this harder than it used to be? And if what I'm saying resonates with any of you right now, if you find yourself in that place where it's just like, this used to be easier, this used to seem, well, like the things I would do, I just made more progress in my faith faster. I took steps with Jesus faster. It was more fun, whatever the case is. If this is resonating with you, maybe you're stuck in this area of your life. So what I want you to know this morning is being stuck doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean your faith is broken. What it probably means is you've just reached a place where what got you here won't get you there, whatever there might be. So if you've set some goals or there's some area of your life you want to grow, especially when it comes to your faith, if there's something about your faith that you want to grow, what got you here, it may not get you there. And every single one of us in the room, every single person online, everybody who's been following Jesus for any amount of time at all has been in this place. We understand, we know what this is like. Maybe you've been in this place in a different area of your life. Like you can think back to your college years, and this is where my stuckness in my faith happened for me. I'll talk about that in a minute. But maybe you think back to your college years and you maybe grew up in church and got out of high school and went to college, and then all of a sudden it's like it just rocked your faith and you came out of your college years just stuck. Maybe it's in your marriage, maybe in your career. It could be some other area of your life. It's like different places, but the same feeling. The same feeling. Again, for me, it was in my college years. Now, here's the weird thing, all right? I was a preacher's kid growing up, so I went to Bible college thinking I was going to work in a church. When I got to college, I realized my faith had never become my own. I went to church because my parents wanted me to go to church. I went to church because it's just what we did. And then I got to Bible college, of all places, and my faith got rocked. My faith got challenged. I left Bible college, didn't graduate from Bible college. I left, moved back to Ohio, and I went to Youngstown State. I was a biology pre-physical therapy major. I thought I'm going to go into sports medicine and I'm going to be a basketball coach because I was trying to figure things out, but at that point my faith just felt stuck. Still went to church. I still go to Bible studies some of the time. I hung out with some of my Christian friends, but it just seemed like the things I had done before weren't working for me anymore. It took me a long time to navigate out of that rut that I was in my faith, in my life. It took some good people and it took God working in my life in some really serious ways, but it took me making some adjustments and taking some key steps in my life that I'm going to share with you this morning. And so if maybe that was your story and it happened in your college years or at some other season of your life, but you're stuck, then man, if you can relate, that's a perfect way to describe what's happening in the story we're going to look at this morning in Mark chapter 9. If you have a Bible, you want to open up to Mark 9. We're going to put this on the screen too so you can follow along with me there. But what we find here in Mark chapter 9 is a story that's not about people who don't believe. And it's not about people who don't necessarily know the right things to do. I mean, they've done the right things. They've seen God move. They've felt him work in their life. They've had success in their faith at different times, but now all of a sudden they're doing what they've always done. It's not working anymore. They're stuck, and they're trying to figure out why. And so if that's you today, then this story is for you, all right? Quick little setup. As we get into this part of Mark chapter 9, we're going to start in verse 17, okay? What's happened just before this is Jesus has been up on a mountaintop with three of the disciples, Peter, James, and John, all right? They've been up on a mountain doing something else, and they've come down the mountain. They're making their way into town. They're catching up to the rest of the group, the other 9 disciples. And as they make their way into town, they find this crowd has gathered, and there's an argument happening. You've got the disciples in the mix. You've got some of the religious leaders in the mix. You've got a crowd watching. And in the center of the crowd, you have this father who's in a really tough place, and his hope is unraveling because of the situation that his son is in on this particular day. So Jesus and Peter and James and John catch up to the crowd, and Jesus, this crowd comes to meet him, and he says, hey, what are you guys arguing about now? And Mark 9:17, we'll pick up the story right there. It says, one man in the crowd spoke up and said, teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He's possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever this spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. And then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they couldn't do it. Originally, when I wrote this series and I started writing this sermon, I thought it was going to be about this father. because he's got this situation with his son who he loves and he's concerned about. Obviously, it's really horrible, really tragic, spiritually deep, like demonic, evil stuff happening in his son's life, right? And I was going to talk about the father and how he's wrestling with this spiritually, but usually what happens when I start writing a sermon is I study myself into a different idea, and I did that this week, okay? I started reading this and I started processing this, and I'm reading the words that this father spoke, and I'm like, okay, we could relate a little bit to this. Like he's in a desperate place. He's stuck in the waiting. He's trying to find a solution to his son's problem. And I was like, okay, we can relate to that. But then I started thinking about this, and then I went backwards. Okay, I went back to Mark chapter 6, where Jesus gives the disciples authority to heal people, cast out demons, represent him in the community, and as they traveled, and they went out and they did it, and it worked. Like they were healing people, they were casting out demons, they were doing what Jesus told them to do, and they were successful, right? They had already seen it happen. They had momentum, they had confidence, they had seen and felt God work in their lives. It's happening, but now on this particular day, this father shows up. He's got a son who's possessed by this demon. Some things are happening, right? And they think, okay, we've done this before, no problem. And they try to help this little boy. And this time it doesn't work. And as I read this story and I'm studying this passage, I realized this isn't about the father, it's the disciples. Because they're doing what they've done, it's just not working now. And they had to be scratching their heads and asking, what in the world is going on? Like we've done this, it's worked, now it's not working, okay? Let's zoom out. Let's talk about their culture. First of all, their culture is spiritually charged. Everything in the Jewish culture was about like religion and how to be good enough and how to satisfy God and follow the rules and check all the right boxes and don't check any of the wrong ones. And they were very supernaturally aware as a culture, okay? But they were deeply divided between the religious elites and like normal people. And so this is exactly what's happening in this crowd. It's spiritually charged, supernaturally aware. You've got the religious elites on one side. You've got these kind of normal, everyday people on the other side. And these religious leaders, these authorities in the religious culture, man, they're watching this happen and they're rooting against the disciples because they're skeptical of Jesus. They don't like him, so they don't like his followers, and they want this to fail. And they're waiting for it to fail. They want to discredit Jesus' movement. They want to derail the whole thing. And so when the disciples try to cast this demon out and it doesn't work, all the religious leaders are very quietly, very subtly going, yes, right? This is what they want. And for the disciples, this is a really visible, very public spiritual failure. It's embarrassing. It's threatening. Their credibility's on the line now, and by proximity, so is Jesus' credibility on the line. And to make matters worse, when the father explains to Jesus what's happening, I brought my son to the disciples, asked him to cast a demon out, they couldn't do it. Jesus doesn't come to their rescue, okay? Here's what he says in verse 19. Jesus said to them, and he's not talking to the father, and he's not talking to the crowd, he's talking to the disciples, the 9 who were down there trying to help this father and his son, right? Jesus said to them, you faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. Did you ever see the movie Sandlot? One of my favorite movie lines of all time is, you're killing me, Smalls. And that's like, this is Jesus' Sandlot moment, right? He looks at these guys and he's like, you're killing me, guys. How long do I have to put up with you, right? He doesn't come to their defense. He's frustrated. Man, you do not want to be the guys in this particular moment, you know? Here's what's happening. Their dependence on God had been replaced by self-reliance. And that's so critical for what we're talking about today. Okay, their dependence on God had been replaced by self-reliance. Look at what they're not doing. They're not praying. They're not confessing. They're not asking for help. They're totally silent in the moment. The reason is because spiritual failure usually pushes us to be defensive, not honest. We don't like to admit our spiritual weaknesses or shortcomings or failures. We get defensive, but not honest. And that's what the guys are doing here. They're not confessing. They're not asking for help. They're quiet. And so you got to understand, Jesus' response here isn't anger. It's not like, man, you couldn't, like, it's grief. His response isn't anger. It's like sadness. He's grieving the fact that these guys, they have been successful because at one point they were dependent on God to be the one who was working through them. And now it's like, maybe they're just so enamored by the spotlight. Maybe they want the affirmation of the crowd. Or maybe they want people to be saying, did you see what those guys did? Whatever it is, in this particular moment, this father brings his son to the disciples, and instead of thinking, man, hopefully God can heal this boy, work through us like he did before, they just think, we got this. And so Jesus is like, man, what's wrong with you guys? You forgot that it's not about what you could do. It's about what only God can do in your life through you, right? See, most of us, when we're stuck in the area of faith in our life, it's not that we feel lost. We're not necessarily broken. Again, it's not like something blew up or fell apart. It's just that we feel stuck. And it's almost worse if you remember when things worked and now it doesn't. You remember when your faith was alive and prayer was easy and taking steps felt natural and you were growing and right? And it's like you're doing the same things, but you're getting different results or none at all. What we learn from this part of the story is you can experience a move of God yesterday and still be stuck today if you stop depending on God. You can experience a mountaintop moment one day, and in the next day, nothing at all. And it all comes down to, do you depend on God or not? See, like the disciples, for those of us who are not new at this, we're not clueless, we're not lazy, we know what to do, we've been here before, we find ourselves asking, we're stuck in our faith, why isn't this working? What am I doing wrong? Why is this harder than it used to be? Am I the problem? Is it something wrong with me? Is it something wrong with my faith? Why does it seem like everybody else is getting it and I'm not? And these are tough questions because they start to, you start to wonder if it's worth it or if you should just maybe throw in the towel. If everybody else is getting it and you're just not, is something wrong with you? And you don't want to sound ungrateful. You don't want to necessarily admit it. You don't want to look weak. Like, we've all understood this tension. We've lived this. And so you keep going. You keep going to church. You keep praying. You keep reading your Bible. You go to your small group. You pray when it feels like you're talking to the ceiling more than you're talking to God. You just keep doing your thing, right? But inside, you have this quiet fear, and this is the fear. You ready? This is what we all wrestle with at some point. What if this is as good as it gets? Like what if this is as strong as my faith is ever going to be? Or what if, as much as I want to trust Jesus more than I do today, just like, what if this is as good as it gets? That's the tension that we all wrestle with. What if this is as good as it gets? What if I'm the problem? Well, one more time, being stuck in your faith doesn't mean you're failed. It means your next step matters. Because those mountaintop moments won't sustain your soul, but taking small, faithful, consistent steps toward Jesus will. See, when you're stuck in your faith, you can choose what to do. Am I going to take a step toward Jesus, or am I going to back away from him? And a lot of people back away, and your faith will not get unstuck if you back away. Instead, you got to lean in. You got to take a step toward Jesus. And so I told you, when I was in this stuck place in my faith, in my life, where it wasn't about like, am I going to go work at a church or not? It was like, is something wrong with my faith or not? Okay? I told you there were some things I had to do. And this was a process that I worked through with a couple really trusted spiritual mentors in my life. But we see all these things modeled in this story. And by the way, these 3 steps that I'm going to give you to get your faith unstuck, if that's where you find yourself today, we see these things modeled in this story, not by the disciples who, ironically enough, they were the guys who should get it, right? They're the ones who were hanging out with Jesus. They're the ones who were listening to him teach and seeing him perform miracles. And he's given them power and authority to perform miracles. If anybody should have the answers, it's those guys. But they're not the ones who got it. The person who models these things for us is this father who's in a moment of crisis. And he doesn't know what else to do. He's the one who demonstrates for us what we should do when our faith is stuck. Here's what happens. I'm going to read the next few verses. We'll break it down. Verse 20 says, so they brought the boy to Jesus. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw the child into a violent convulsion, and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. How long has this been happening? Jesus asked the boy's father, and he replied, since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into fire or into water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can. What do you mean if I can? Jesus asked. Anything is possible if a person believes. And listen to this answer. The father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. 3 things we see in these verses. The first one is you got to assess where you are. If you're stuck in your faith today, assess where you are. It's pretty clear the father had done this. And maybe the assessment in this case was pretty easy. It's like, I know what's wrong with my boy. I know what I need. I know I can't do it. I know I need some help. Like he's assessed this whole thing, even to the point where he's able to say to Jesus, yes, I believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. That word unbelief in the Greek is this word apistia, which means weakness of faith or want of faith. And so what he's saying is, yes, Jesus, I believe, but my faith is not strong enough here. And I need you not just to heal my boy. I need you to help me believe that you can. I need you to help me see that you can. I need you to help me trust that you can. He knew he had a big problem. He knew he couldn't fix it. And he knew his spiritual condition in the midst of it. So listen, if you're stuck, you start by assessing your spiritual condition. You start by taking stock of your faith. Look for where you've stopped depending on God and started depending on you. See, our faith gets stuck when we stop relying on him and we start thinking that we're sufficient. We start thinking we have the strength or we have the answers or we have what it takes to deal with the problems in our life, overcome the hurdles in our life, take steps, move forward. When we stop relying on God, we start depending on ourselves, that's when our faith gets stuck. And this is usually how it works. We end up being active but not prayerful. And so we're doing a lot of things for God, but we're not being with God. Does that make sense? We're doing a lot of things for God. I volunteer, I serve, I teach, I lead, I go to church, whatever it is. Like I'm doing things for God, reading my Bible because I think it makes him happy. I'm praying because I think he wants me to, but I'm not being with him. There's a big difference. Doing things for God, man, there's some merit to that, but if you're not being with him in it, then your faith's gonna get stuck. We just get busy. What I've found is when my faith starts to get stuck in my life, it doesn't usually have to do with belief on my part, it just has to do with spiritual drift. Again, it goes from relying on God, depending on him and being with him, to relying on me and doing things for him. So what you can do, I'm gonna give you some questions to ask to assess, okay? You can ask things like, where am I frustrated because I'm not seeing fruit in my life? Where do I wanna see growth in my faith, but it's just not happening? Or what's happening in my life that I wanna trust God with, but I just can't, so I keep trying to take control. Is there a situation? Is there a relationship? Is there a decision that you're facing and you're like, man, I wanna trust God with this, but I'm just having a hard time, and so I just keep trying to take control because I just don't trust God. And if that's you, you're just like the father in the story where you're saying, God, I believe, but help my unbelief. So ask yourself that question. Where am I doing the right things, but I'm not seeing any movement? Where have I stopped praying and I've just started assuming I already know what God's answer is going to be? Maybe it's like you've prayed for something for so long and there hasn't been what you would say is an answer to your prayers. And so you've stopped praying because you're just assuming God's answer is no. That's a spiritual stuckness. And then here's one more question. And this is a critical one. Who around me might see something that I can't? When our faith gets stuck, it's usually people of faith who are nearby who can see things in our lives that we can't see or we can't discern. And so you need some people who know you. You need some people who love you. You need some people who care about you, not just you, but your soul, who are close enough to you that can, and you've given them the ability to tell you the truth. And they can say, here's what I think is going on in your life. When it comes to your faith, you need those people. By the way, it's a perfect opportunity to say this is why we talk about groups all the time here at FCC. I have 2 groups I'm a part of, and both of those groups play a critical part in my faith, okay? Those are people that I learned from, and they help me, but they're people I can be honest with, and you need those people too, because not only can you be honest with them, but they can be honest with you, and they'll usually spot something going on in your faith or going on in your life before you will. So you need those people. God uses people around us to show us what we can't see, okay? So all of this, again, is part of this first step, and that is just assess, just figure out, where am I? Take inventory, okay? That brings us to the second thing, which is once you've assessed, you gotta be able to admit that you're stuck. And I know this isn't easy, but you have to be able to do this. The father in this story, he knew he didn't have the solution to the problem. He couldn't heal his son. He couldn't drive this demon out. He wasn't able to do this. And he wanted to not only believe, but he wanted to trust that Jesus did have the answer, did have the power, did have the ability to do for his little boy what he couldn't do, okay? Now, what we learn from this part of the story is our faith gets stuck when we think that faith means certainty. Our faith gets stuck when we confuse questions and doubts with failure. It's like I can't bring my questions to God. I can't bring my doubts to God, or that's failing. And he's going to be disappointed in me, right? Our faith gets stuck when we believe our honesty is disappointing to him, and our faith gets stuck when we think that we have to manufacture the results. Like God's waiting for us to be the ones to solve the problem. When we let ourselves start to believe that, our faith's going to get stuck. And I think of this verse in John chapter 15 where Jesus, it's just such a simple thing, but he just says, man, apart from me, you can't do anything. Apart from me, why even try? But we do, right? It's a spiritually dangerous place to be, to not realize how much you need God, but it is just as dangerous, maybe even more, to realize how much you need God and not be willing to admit it. And so, yeah, you can assess, but until you get to the point where you can admit that you're stuck, you're not going to make any progress. So can I challenge you? Stop saying the things that you think a good Christian is supposed to say. Stop just trying to say the right things. Stop putting a face on. Stop just, again, doing things for God, not being with him. Get real about where you are, just like the father in the story. Because see, he said what the disciples felt and couldn't admit. And this is what I told you, I studied myself into another idea here. I realized the Father got what the disciples didn't even understand. Maybe they didn't even realize it at this part of the story, but this dad gets it, and he says what they couldn't admit. He's like, Jesus, I need you. Help me if you can, and help my unbelief. He understood it. The disciples hid their stuckness behind activity, but the Father was honest about his need, and he confessed his weakness. He was real with Jesus. He's like, help my unbelief. I want more faith. I need more faith. I need it to be deeper. I need it to be more meaningful. I need it to hold me steady in my life in these moments where I don't know what to do. And so he was honest with Jesus. See, I want you to know God already knows where your faith is struggling. He's already aware of it. And when you're able to admit it to him, all it does is bring you into alignment with what God already knows to be true. And if you need a framework for this, Psalm 139 is great, but there are two verses right at the end of this psalm that are so good. Verses 23 and 24 says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Just use that as a prayer. God, search me. Search all through my heart. You already know my heart. You know everything about me. You know where my strengths are, but you know my weakness is better than I do. So search me, God. Point out anything that's not right, okay? God already knows it. You're just inviting him to make you aware of it, all right? And I want you to know that when he searches you, and he will answer that prayer. He's not doing it to shame you. He's not doing it to, look for reasons to be mad at you. He's doing it to help you. So you can admit your fear, you can admit your weakness, you can admit your insufficiency, you can admit what you need from him. You can do all of those things because you're not going to disappoint him, okay? Sometimes I think when we put God in that box where it's like, if he realizes I have a weakness, he's going to be so disappointed in me, we forget he's bigger than we thought he is, okay? He can take it. You're not going to disappoint him. You're not going to let him down, all right? So assess where you are and admit where you're stuck. And then the third thing is you got to ask for help. You got to ask for help. And by the way, this is more for you than for him because he's ready. But you got to put yourself in a posture, in a position in your life where you're not just willing to ask for help, but to actually receive it when he gives you help. So you got to ask for help. This is what the Father does when he says, have mercy on us and help us, right? He's admitting, Jesus, I need you in this situation. I need your help here. And what we see is Jesus respond to that honesty. And this is what he does for us. He doesn't respond to our pretending, doesn't respond to our posturing. He's not impressed when we act like we have it all together. Like you might fool some people, you're not going to fool him, okay? Doesn't impress him. What he responds to is honesty. What he responds to is transparency. And he responds to a posture when you put yourself in a position to say, I can't do this. Help me believe that you can. I want to. I believe in you. I just need stronger faith. I just need deeper trust. So help my unbelief, right? God responds to that. What Jesus said to the Father in the story and what he will say to you is, watch this. So here's what happens in verse 25. Jesus says, listen, he's talking to the demon at this point. Listen, you spirit that makes this boy unable to hear and speak. He's getting his attention, right? I command you to come out of this child and never enter him again. Then the spirit screamed and threw the boy into another violent convulsion and left him, and the boy appeared to be dead. A murmur ran through the crowd. as people said, he's dead. They thought, okay, the spirit's gone, but it cost this boy his life, right? But Jesus took him by the hand and helped him to his feet, and he stood up. Could you imagine being in the crowd when this happens? This had to be crazy. Afterward, when Jesus was alone in the house with his disciples, they asked him, what? Jesus, hang on. Let's watch the game tape, right? What happened out there? We've done this before. You told us we could cast demons out. We've done it. What happened? We tried what you told us to do. It didn't work, right? They said, why couldn't we cast out that evil spirit? And Jesus replied, this kind can be cast out only by prayer. Not more effort. He wasn't like, well, your technique was a little off. No, by prayer. I don't want you to miss what he's getting at here, okay? Wouldn't you think this would be like common sense, all right? Wouldn't you think you would start with, God, we don't know what to do with this demon, so help? And Jesus is like, no, this kind only comes out by prayer. Here's what he's getting at. What he's getting at is, you guys didn't even try. You did. What he's saying is they acted, but they tried to act out of their own strength. And he's like, no, you can't do it. You got to start by going to the source. What are you thinking? Right? But then I thought, man, how many times have I done that? I started thinking back through my life, and I was like, how many situations have I been in where I did exactly that? And I have to think that if I were face to face with Jesus at that point, he would have been like, what were you thinking? Of course, you start with prayer. What were you trying to do this on your own for? What were you thinking you could find the answers, or your friends had the answers, or you could read a book and get the answers? Like, why wouldn't you start with me? I have to think so many times. That's what he would say to me. And so many times, that's what he would say to you. And so many times, that's what he would say to us, because we read a story like this and we're like, stupid disciples. Of course they should have prayed, but then you look in the mirror and you think, yeah, I probably should do some more of that too, right? See, our faith gets stuck when we depend on ourselves more than we depend on God. And we do it all the time. We do it all the time. True faith is not about having it all figured out. This father, he didn't have anything figured out except, I have a problem, I can't fix it. Maybe Jesus can. And so you bring what you have, and in this case, it was a father bringing his broken child to the feet of the healer, the chain breaker, the way maker, and saying, can you break a chain and make a way that I can't? Because I'm stuck, right? So he brings him to Jesus. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 gives us some confidence here, though. See, this verse says, this is Jesus, his words in Paul's words. He says, my grace is all you need because my power works best in weakness. In other words, when you release your grip and open your hands up and hold them out to me and let me do my thing, Jesus says, that's when I can really work in your life. That's when I can do something powerful. That's when he'll show up and he'll say, now watch this. Watch this. His grace is sufficient, not you, not me, not our strength or our talents, our abilities, our willpower, our drive, right? Totally insufficient. Like, you don't think this father would have healed his son if he could have? Oh, in a heartbeat. Parents, you get it. Your kid gets like a cold and you're like, I would die for you, right? He would have healed his kid in a heartbeat. He could, but Jesus could. So he brought what he had to him and he handed control to him. There's an author named Oswald Chambers. I love a lot of what he writes, and he wrote something really cool about prayer. He said, prayer does not equip us for greater works. Prayer is the greater work. And so here's what I'll challenge you to do. Start praying before you take a step, not after the step you take fails, okay? Pray before. Pray consistently, not just desperately. What if you prayed and you invited God into the outcome and not just the process? And maybe that looks like, God, I want your will, not just my will. Not what I want, but I want the outcome here to be what you want. What about this? Don't just ask God to make things easier. Ask him to help you trust him deeper, even if what you have to go through is really, really hard. So Jesus, I love this. Didn't shame the father, didn't dismiss him when he's like, help my unbelief. Jesus wasn't like, unbelief, come back when you've tried a little harder. He didn't do that. He also didn't fire the disciples. Probably wanted to. But he let them hang around, right? And that's encouraging to me. So here's what I can tell you. What I can tell you is if your faith feels stuck, you're not failing, you're not broken, you're also not alone, okay? So stop trying to fix it. Let Jesus do what only he can do. It doesn't begin with more effort. It doesn't begin with better technique. See, if you do those things, if you just try harder, if you just do more, or you try to do something a little different, what that usually leads to, like, you just carry a spiritual frustration into a new season. And if you've been frustrated spiritually, if you've been stuck spiritually, I don't want that for you in this new year. Jesus does not want that for you in this new year. So stop just trying to do more. Stop trying to change your technique. Let Jesus do his thing in your life. Ask for help. Make prayer your first response, not your last resort. Prayer is what makes stuck faith move again. So before you take a step, pray. Before you accept or decline that job offer, pray. Before you try to fix your marriage or your relationship or your friendship, pray. Before you enroll in that school or pick your major, pray. Before you commit, pray. Before you assume, pray. Before you quit, pray. Before you make a decision, before you move, pray. And invite God into the outcome, not just the process. If you do a little math, okay, think about this. If you pray 5 minutes a day, you will spend 30 hours with God this year. 5 minutes a day. I mean, you want to go real crazy, right? Maybe only monks do this, I don't know, but like pray 144 minutes a day. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. If you tithe your time, that's 10%, that's 144 minutes. If you're like, I'm gonna pray 144 minutes, I'm going crazy. Let's be real, that's probably one of those, 40% of resolutions that won't make it through January, but best intentions, right? I'm gonna pray 144 minutes a day. Do you realize you would spend 36 and a half days with God this year? Wonder what our faith would be like if we would do that. In 5 minutes a day, you spend 30 hours with God this year. Pray, right? And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be impressive. It doesn't have to be polished. It just has to be an honest, simple admission, a declaration of dependence. Say, God, I need you. Because I've been trying to do this. It's not working. And I believe, but help my unbelief. Help me where I'm weak. Help me trust you more. Let this be the year that you stop carrying burdens you were never supposed to carry. The burden of responsibility, the burden of progress, the burden of growing faith you were never supposed to carry. That was never your job. Your job is just to take a step toward Jesus and let him do what only he can do. Let him deepen your faith in a way that only he can deepen your faith. Guys, don't just believe in God. Rely on him. Depend on him. Not just on Sundays for a few minutes, but every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in connection with him. Depend on him and watch what he does. Because you know what he'll do? Just like he did for the father in this story. If you will come to him and you will be honest, you'll assess, you'll admit that you need his help, you'll ask for help, right? You put yourself in a position, take a posture in your life to say, Jesus, I need you. He will do this. I promise you. He will say, watch this. And get ready. Get ready. Because your faith's going to move. Let's pray. God, some of us need that. Because we're hanging in. And our honest prayer today, some of us would be, I believe, help my unbelief. So God, I just ask you to do that. In a new year, with new opportunities and a fresh outlook. But then there's this, like, some of us are just carrying these burdens from last year. And as much as we would love to say, like, new year, new me, fresh start, and all that stuff's in the past, it's just not. I know some people come into this year, it already feels like the weight of the world is on them in some area of their life. And when that's some other area, but our faith is solid, it's one thing. We can handle that other stuff because we have your strength. But when it's our faith that's heavy, we just feel stuck. So I just ask right now, God, for anybody who's in that place, beginning in this moment, would you remind us you're bigger than we thought? You're not disappointed. You're not going to shame us and send us away and scold us, put your finger in our face and tell us to get it together. Remind us of your compassion and your love and your open arms that says, just come a little closer and see what I can do. Just give us the faith to take that step, to begin to pray, to say, God, I need you because I believe, but help my unbelief. Give us that faith. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.